A Trump DOJ lawyer is now profusely apologizing to a federal judge in Rhode Island for withholding critical information about an individual who the judge ordered released because she didn't have the information that this guy that she released was wanted on murder in the Dominican Republic. And this Justice Department lawyer who was working with the DHS and ICE was told, we can't disclose this right now because of a deal between the United States and the Dominican Republic, and we don't know if we can allow this information to get out there based on some international agreement. But then as this hearing took place about releasing this guy who had this international warrant taking place, unbeknownst to the DOJ lawyer who was speaking to ICE and speaking to the DHS, who said, don't tell the judge. We can't tell the judge based on basically international like treaties and international agreements. What does DHS and ICE then do? They post on social media and they make a press release accusing the judge of then allowing this guy to be released and said, aha, there was an international warrant. This is a murderer. And this is a Biden activist judge. And her name is Judge DeBose. And that just look at what these crooked Biden judges are doing. It seems like it was a setup. They sent this DOJ lawyer and said, don't tell the judge because of it's an international relations issue. So the lawyer goes in, doesn't tell the judge. Then when the judge says, okay, based on the information before me by the DOJ, we're going to release this guy. Had the judge known that the guy had an international warrant for murder, the judge wouldn't have released this guy. Because let's face it, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, if people have warrants for murder, those are the types of people who actually should be put in prison or deported or not in the United States. Not the hardworking people, not the type of people who the Trump regime is frequently targeting. But it seems what the DHS and ICE, what they were doing is having the lawyer get in, let the judge release the guy. And then once the judge released the guy, say, look, this just shows you that the Biden judges are corrupt and they're letting them out. And so the judge then holds like an emergency hearing and says, now I'm getting targeted by like death threats. DOJ lawyer, you came in, the DOJ's lawyer's name is Kevin Boland. You told me this guy should be released. So I listened to you. I'm the judge. I'm not the investigator. You're the DOJ. You're supposed to be the police in this situation. You're supposed to let me know. So I based my releasing this guy when you said there was no reason basically not to release this guy, and you withheld this information. And now I'm being targeted. I'm getting death threats. And this lawyer, by the way, who joined the DOJ in 2023, and he was a guy who worked at White and Case, which is a top law firm in the country. And he did it as kind of sacrificing to his career, to give public service and to give back. And so this guy's been a kind of a prosecutor for some time, but he was from the private sector, made a lot of money, and started working in the Biden administration. He didn't try to do this to like hurt the judge. And then he found out that he was played and that he then played the judge. So in this hearing on Monday, he told the judge, I'm deeply sorry. Please forgive me. What we said was completely erroneous to you. And then the lawyer fell on the sword because, he felt, Judge, I would never do this intentionally. You have to believe me. I'm really, really, really sorry. But here's the thing. As of at least this recording, the press release by the Department of Homeland Security attacking the judge had not been taken down, had not been removed. It was being used by the Trump regime in order to call out this judge when the DOJ has apologized to the judge for what they did. And it seems this is, again, let's bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, podcast, and Substack. Harry was a top prosecutor at the DOJ, ran the Western District of Pennsylvania. You were top lawyer at Maine Justice, Harry. This seems like a multi-layer, how Trump does multi-layer Ponzi schemes, in my opinion. This was like a multi-layer setup, it looks like. They took this lawyer out there. They told him this is like an international treaty issue. We have to be careful. It's the Dominican Republic. There's a whole broader issue here. We don't know what the Dominican Republic is going to do. So we can't disclose it because we could be violating treaties and international. So the lawyer's like, okay. He consults with his client, the DHS. He goes in. He claims, I wasn't trying to deceive the judge. I just assumed this is what my client basically, said in this case. And then the client, DHS, goes out there, blasts the judge for doing it, and then they keep the press release out there. And then the judge holds a hearing. This lawyer's like, Judge, I'm so sorry. And now, though, this lawyer's in a lot of trouble, even though he doesn't seem to have done it intentionally, but you have a duty of candor. And were you now kind of compromised by this horrible position they put you in? Should you have even showed up to this hearing, or should you have known better? I don't feel comfortable with this. I can't withhold. I have a duty of candor to the court. But these are the ethical situations that, even if you're well-intentioned and you hold on for dear life in the DOJ to work there because you believe there's some higher calling, these are the traps that you're put in on a day-to-day basis. So now the court's doing an investigation, special master, all of these things. And this guy could have serious ramifications for him and for others involved. Harry, what do you make of it all?
Yeah, look, I think the legal term, Ben, of all these would be clusterfuck. It's just so illustrative. First and foremost, I'll get back to this guy, but first and foremost, this really shows the combination of both ineptitude and nastiness and just indifference to the rule of law of ICE. These guys, just as you say, tell them you can't reveal this, and suggest the DR hasn't signed off on it yet. And he puts, we've had many different kinds of cases in which ICE either can't be found, doesn't respond. It's an impossible client that's made DOJ look bad in court again and again. But to make it even worse, they actually had revealed, there's also the right hand not knowing what the left hand's doing, because by the time he shows up in court and they have this hearing where he doesn't reveal it, after which they put out the press release, they've revealed it now anyway. So you have, and you did summarize it, but I just want to give more of the flavor. You have in all caps, Biden, activist, judge, releases, murderer, etc. Exactly the kind of narrative they've been looking to apply again and again, but just hasn't been true because all the people they've been going after, in fact, have not been these sorts of murderers. Now, this guy, he's been there since 23. So, we did this other YouTube today also talking about how the DOJ can't even find regular people anymore. He's the kind of guy they used to have. Longtime partner at a law firm, a professional, comes in, takes the pay cut, and is working there since 23. And he does what you would expect an AUSA to do in this situation. First, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes to ICE, but you would go to that supervisor, that person, and say, what position are you putting all of us in? But he goes and is absolutely abject. I'm so sorry to the court, files a motion, and the Rhode Island U.S. Attorney's Office, per the first assistant, another professional, not the Trump cadre of, complete activist political types, files a corrected press release saying we really made DuBose look bad. We shouldn't have. It's all our fault. And as you say, I checked just before we went on, this completely false, misleading, nasty, defamatory to the judge press release is still up there screaming about the dangers of activist Biden judges, that's their word, letting people out. Now, the judge, a couple points. First, as she said, if they really thought there was a problem, and here she takes the AUSA to task a little, you can file it under seal. If you don't have to not tell me and deceive me, file it under seal if for some reason you want me to know it, but not publicize it. And that's absolutely true. That's what should have happened here. But second, she is now issued, as you say, we're not done with this yet. I want to find out if the duty to candor was violated. But I think she wants to really hear from, she's heard from this lawyer. I think she wants to know who are the people at ICE who are leaving this up still, don't seem to care at all, and have really hung me out to dry. And look, it's not simply like talking about thin-skinned judges. These things happen, and judges, not used to this at all, never happened before the Trump era, are honestly, I don't know what's happened to DeBose since that, in the last few days, since the press release was up, they are getting death threats. Their children are getting, the Domino's pizza treatment and the like. And, she's saying, what the F have you done here? So I think she's signaled that she wants to know more about what ICE did and the deception that, they didn't tell the AUSA that they'd already publicized, and they told them not to say. And then this press release, which is obviously the professional in the U.S. Attorney's Office, which I would understand we've got to correct this right away. That's what you do when you're found out and you're a DOJ person with integrity. And that to this day it is still up there, and you have ICE apparently unrepentant about this flat out, lie and manipulation of the judge in the public sphere. And who knows what kind of lone wolf operators are now calling up, and does she need protection? Man, it tells you all you need to know about ICE as a client, both in terms of its ineptitude and its viciousness. So this is a little kind of story that really tells you quite a bit about what's been happening at the lawyering level, with the DOJ having to be the ones who go into court and defend sometimes indefensible maneuvers from ICE and Department of Homeland Security.
I always said, as a lawyer, don't tell me how many years you were a lawyer. Tell me where you worked, because you can work at a place for 30 years, but if they're teaching you the wrong thing, that doesn't mean you have experience. Here's a lawyer who was working at White and Case, who probably had a very collegial top lawyers to bounce ideas off of and got very good experience. Then you go into this environment right here, which you have very low morale. It's probably miserable to begin with.
Yep.
You probably despise your client because you're not getting information. You just want to try to hold on for dear life. Decisions are being made very quickly. And when you do that, even if you're, I think, well-intentioned, I'm not making excuses for the guy, but eventually your own calibration, when you're surrounded by such bad people, can lead to kind of a breakage, and even go, no one's you can get into a mindset. Was anybody really going to know that? Or maybe what they're telling me is right. Let me just file this thing and let me get through it. And so the normal reps that you would go through, you think of like a quarterback on a football field, left, right, left, right. You go through your reps in your mind, but you play for a really bad team with a really bad coach. You may just go, you know what? Just throw it that way. Intercepted. And, even the best QB in that environment can screw up. Again, I'm not making excuses for him, but there's a reason that we call it the practice of law versus a science of law. And there's a reason that law firms and your team is a very important aspect of it. And I'll leave with that. But any final words that you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to really point out here that, DOJ has been put in a bad position, and they don't have the horses anymore, et cetera. But the real difference here is between DOJ and the Department of Homeland Security. I want to point out that, again, the first assistant, so the professional there, I'm sure he's been there many years, he's the one who steps up and says, we got to put out a press release. We got to correct it. This is what it means to be a DOJ lawyer. And that's notwithstanding. He told her, frankly, this is what ICE told me. I'm not going to lie for them, but they didn't crucify ICE. But the whole situation absolutely was, they put them in. And you, even to this moment, have when this real black eye has occurred, what happens? You have the professionals saying, we got to get right by the judge. And you essentially have the ICE and immigration forces. This is why we're seeing professionalism problems up and down, from the street to the supervisory staff of ICE, saying, we don't care. And we're happy enough to just leave this obviously misleading thing out there. There must have been a lot of really heated discussion, that you have the U.S. Attorney's Office saying, oh, look, screw you. We're not gonna completely ruin our reputation. I'm putting out a press release explaining what happened. And if you're not going to even begin to think about doing the right thing, we can't be dragged down with you. That's what's going on here. And it's going to be really interesting if she wants the judge wants to hear more about what happened. I'm just going to ask to be, I want to know who was the ICE person there. I'm going to want their testimony, and we're going to have that whole thing where we've seen again and again ICE try to, stonewall those efforts and not be held accountable in the courts.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Everybody make sure you subscribe to the Harry Litman YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. Search Talking Feds wherever you get on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe here. Also subscribe to Talking Feds on podcast. Subscribe to Talking Feds on Substack. Harry, thanks for everything.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, everybody. And